Welcome back. Okay, so now we want to be able to walk over to like a keypad or something, or the lock itself. There's a prompt, and we want to be able to interact with the prompt and then pull the widget up. So let's go ahead and get started on that. First, let's go to the level blueprint, and where we had this set up temporarily, we can get rid of that now. You can disconnect it, or we actually don't need it anymore. Get rid of that. And now we'll need a keypad for the character to interact with. I've actually made one. I put it in the description. You could download it. And the files are over here. I'm going to make a folder real quick. Just call this Interactables. That way, if we want to keep adding things in this tutorial series, we could have more things to interact with. So we can just import this stuff. That's all right. All right, I might have had multiples of the texture. That's all right. And that way we could just pull it right on in there. And if your textures don't show up correct when you first upload it or import it, here's where you can access them, and you can plug them in here. Okay, and then we just need a couple more things for the setup. We're going to need a player controller. I couldn't remember if we already set one up. I'm just going to do it again just in case. Blueprint class, player controller. Let's call this... I'm going to call it the tutorial controller. Yeah, that works. I was just thinking, I was going to just call it player controller, but there might be a default one already called that. Just make sure I know what I'm talking. And you could use any player controller for this. We just need one so we could pull the widget stuff up. Instead of doing it through the player, I like to do widget stuff on the controller. We need to go to the world settings, and then under game mode, in selected game mode, go to player controller, and then this is where we're going to put that controller we just made. All right. Go ahead and save that. And when the player comes up to the keypad, I want a text to come on screen that tells the player to interact with it. So we're going to need to make another widget, and this is, unless your game already has a player UI, we just need a basic player UI so we can just show a message on screen. Oh, no, I'm just going to go to user interface, widget blueprint. I'm going to call this W_player UI. Oop. All right, let's open it up. And in here, I just like to add a canvas panel. And we just want a little message to show up when the player's around an interactable to say, press the interact button. I think I'm just going to look for a border. Drag it on there. I think I'm going to anchor it to the bottom middle. When you anchor it, you got to zero out the positions. Let's do the alignment to 0.5 and 0.5 just to get it in the middle. And then let's move the position. Oh, not the X position. Okay, so negative, when you go like negative 150. That looks good. Or no, let's do negative 300. Boop. Then there we need to add a text. I got my cap blocks on. And on the border, let's go ahead and make this a variable and call it the message border. And click size to content. Oh, and I don't like it being white there. Let's see. Sorry, sometimes I forget. Okay, brush color. Let's turn the alpha to 0. There we go. Yeah, go to appearance, brush color, alpha to 0. Okay, cool. And with our text selected, this will also need to be a variable. And this is our message variable. Let's call it message text, message variable. And in the text box, just call it message. There we go. Make it a little bigger. Yeah, it looks good. You could change the font. If you want a different font, you need to import a font. We don't have that. I might add an outline just to make it pop. 3. Yeah. Okay, now we can set up this UI on the player controller that we just made. It's compiled, save. We can close this for now. Let's open up our controller. Open full editor. And since widgets only run on client, I was told to do a little check beforehand. We just do a delay. And then a check. It's called is local player controller. And then we run a branch off of that. And this just makes sure that only the client's drawing widgets, from what I understand. And let's go to, now we can create the widget. It's called player UI. Oh, there it is right there. And then it's really important to promote this to a variable. I'll call it the player UI. I'll call it player UI ref. And now with it as a reference, we can call it and do all sorts of cool stuff. And then from here, we're going to add to viewport. Cool. And then now we could just check and make sure this works real quick. Just do a little test. Boom, message. So that's what it's going to look like when we create an interactable and walk up to it. That's what the text will look like. It'll say press interact. Okay, so now that we know that it's drawing the player UI, we can set this message border to hidden. So look for visibility. And set it to hidden by default because you don't want it just showing all the time. And then now that that's done, we need to go ahead and make the interactable class. Sorry if this seems like it's all over the place. I forgot just how much stuff is needed to set up before you could get this all working, but that's fine. We could do it. And this is just a static mesh, so we don't need that. Let's make an actual blueprint actor. to be the interactable base. And I'm going to do it, I'm not just going to make one interactable, I'm going to make an interactable base, and then the keypad will be a child of that, just in case I want to come back to this tutorial series and make more interactables. So let's go ahead and make that interactable base. Let's make it inside of our interactables folder. Let's right click, make a blueprint class, type actor, and call it BP. I'm going to call it BP base interactable. Okay. Open it up. And we're going to add a static mesh. And this will be our interactable mesh. And we could drag it up to the scene root, and this will actually be the root of the blueprint. So every interactable will have a mesh. It'll have to be an object. And we also need a collision sphere. Just like that. Compile, save. And we could disable the tick on the base. I probably don't have to go into detail here. There are a few settings let's change. And first we'll go to the mesh, click on the mesh, and then let's do some of these collision presets here. We're not going to want to generate overlap events. We're going to do no on player step up on. And then here we're actually going, we don't want the character to collide with it at all. We're going to have the collision sphere do do that logic. So we'll go to ignore all. The only two exceptions are going to be world static, world dynamic. And that's good for the mesh. And then we need to go over to the sphere. And with the sphere selected, we go down to the collision settings. And we do want generate overlap events, so that's correct. And then the presets, we want it to ignore everything except the pawn. So ignore all overlap pawn. And this will be the character, so the sphere will know when the character collides. All right. Compile and save that. Now, in order for the sphere to know it's the player, first, with the sphere selected, I'm going to scroll down until you see the green buttons, and we want on component begin overlap. And it'll take us into the event graph. And I do multiplayer games a lot, so I want to make sure that this is going on the server, so I just do this switch has authority. And basically, this way we know it's just going on the server. And now we want to make sure it's a player before we do anything. You know, in some cases you would make sure it's the player before you cast. But I think what we're going to do is make sure it's the player before we use an interface. Casting and interfaces are pretty similar, but interfaces to me are easier, and a lot of the times they're better on performance. And what I'm going to use to see if it's the character is I'm going to use a tag. So off of here, we go actor has tag. And we'll say player. Now what you need to do is add this player tag to your character. And we'll go ahead and do that. We'll go to our third person character. You can go to your character if you already have one. And I think it's in the defaults here. Search for it. Tags. Yeah, tags. And then we add an element, and this is where we're going to type player. And compile and save that. So now back in our interactable, once the player hits the collision, let's do a print string to see if this works. Let's take the other actor and put it in here. And it'll display the name. Compile, save. Oh, we got to put one out there. Okay, so let's go to our interactables. And now we could drag this out here. Oh, it's kind of small. You know, I forgot to change the size of the sphere. Through experience, I use 180, I think. Or was it... Let's do 100. Compile and save. Oh, that's in the sphere radius inside. You have to have sphere selected, and then you can change the sphere radius. And see, it's much bigger. Go ahead and play. I could have made it... Oh, see the top left? Right when we went into the sphere, it knows that that's us. Okay, so it's reading the character. That's good. So we can get rid of this. And now, actually, in our character, when our character goes over the collision sphere, we need to store some data here. We're going to use an interface to do this. We're going to have a character interface. So let's go back to our our combo lock project folder, and I'm going to make a new interface. So go to blueprint. Yeah, here it is, and blueprint interface. And we're going to call it int player. It's the player interface. Let's go ahead and open it. And the function will be called set interactable info. And we can compile and save. And then now we can go to our character. And we can call that now. Oh, well, first we have to attach the interface to our character. Sometimes I get ahead of myself. Oh, and the interfaces are in the class settings. Let's go to class settings and implemented interfaces. We're going to add the player interface. Boom. File and save. And now we will have access to that set pickup, or not pickup, set interactable info. event. There we go. And this will happen when we go back to our base interactable here, and we can call that. So other actor, just like that. Drag off the other actor, and then here is where we will collect the information. So like its name and stuff. And so the name that's going to display on the screen is going to come from the interactable blueprint. And since this is the base blueprint, we'll go ahead and put the variable in here. And it's going to be of type text. And we're going to call it the interactable name. And if yours didn't come out as text, you come over here and you select text. Compile and save. Okay, and in order for the character to get this information, we can make a reference inside the interface to get the object reference. Or, you know, let's start this way. Let's get a reference to self. See, this is an object reference coming from the interactable, and then we need to pass it into the interface. Let's go to your interface, and it's going to be the input. And then you search for it here. It's going to be our base interactable. Object reference. We could call it interactable actor. Okay. Compile and save. And now we could pass it through here. And then back in our character here, now we have that actor reference. And I think we could just go ahead and get yeah, there it is. We can get interactable name. And I actually want to see if this works, but first we have to go assign a value to this name variable. So let's call this the base interactable. But when you have other items, each one will have its own name. This is just for testing purposes. So now that we have that, we'll drag off this and do a print string. And now that variable should show up when we test this. Okay, there's the collision sphere. Need to walk into it. Perfect. It says base interactable, so it works every time we hit it. That is awesome. We're getting close, trust me. Now with that all done, we can finish making our keypad, finally. And we do that by going to the base interactable, right-clicking. Oh, excuse me, I got the hiccups. What a great time for hiccups. Create child blueprint class. And this one will be our interactable keypad. Oh, I really got the hiccups going. Okay. And our mesh will be the keypad mesh. I forgot what it's called. Oh, it is just called keypad mesh. That's easy. Excuse me. I need to get some water after a second. And we can kind of... That's actually pretty good. I like that. But if you want to change the sphere collision, you can move it around the mesh, but you can't move the mesh because the sphere is parented. That looks pretty good. Compile and save. And now we have this instead of the base one. So let's get rid of this. We no longer need this. And we can drag our interactable keypad out. Yeah, look at it. Just pop this in here. All right, look at it. It's all cool. Okay, and then we need to go back into the base interactable, and I forgot to. We need to select the name variable, make it instance editable, expose on spawn, compile and save. That way, when you go to the keypad, when you click on its defaults, it's going to give you an option for the name here. So now we can call it the keypad lock. Bam. And compile and save. Now when the player goes into here, we should... Or actually, I want to change something else about it. Let's go to it. Classic keypad. Press interact. Compile, save. So it gives the player a prompt. Let's go ahead and test that. Cool. In the top left, you see keypad lock, press interact. Okay, so now we just need to go back to the character. Where did I put the... Okay, back in the third person character. Now this was good for testing, but we actually need to get rid of this and set this like as a temporary actor. We only want it set when you're in the collision box or the collision sphere, and then when you leave it, we want it unset. But we're gonna go ahead and promote this to a variable. Let's call it the overlapped interactable. And now we'll need to go back to the base interactable, and we need an on-end overlap. It's in the same spot. Oh wait, we need to select the sphere, the collision sphere, and then on component end overlap. And with the end overlap, we're actually just going to copy all of this. So you can Control C, Control V. And we're going to add a Boolean to our interface here. So let's go into the interface. And the Boolean's going to be called overlapped. Or overlapping. I'm going to use overlapping. It's a Boolean. Cool. Oh, I forgot to plug this in. Duh. Okay, that's why I was getting that error. But now, we could set that to overlapping. And then when you leave, it is no longer overlapping. All right, and then now that overlapping's been added, we can go back to the character, and we could do a Boolean check here. So, if it is overlapping, we set it, copy it, and then we unset it. Okay, and now we're going to need to go do some stuff on the UI so we could pop the message up. We're going to open up the controller, or actually we need an interface for the controller. So, back in our combo lock folder, let's make another interface. This is going to be for the tutorial controller. We'll go int underscore. That works. And the function will be show interactable name. Right? Yeah. Okay, with the interface set up, let's go ahead and open the tutorial controller. And in the defaults, we need to... Oh, it's in the class settings. We can add it. Add the interface. And then now with the interface, we have access to that function. The thing about widgets, though, this is coming off the server. We need to show it on the client. So we're going to have to do a custom event and call it client underscore show interactable name. That way we could just call it here. And it will show on the player's screen. Oh, and it's important to make sure that this event here is run on owning client. Oh yeah, and also set it to reliable. And now we can go back to our widget. Remember this? Okay, the player UI widget. We can go to the graph. And we're just going to make a custom event that we can access from the player controller. It's going to be the interactable message. Yeah, interactable message, and we're going to add... oh, here's the inputs. We're going to add a boolean. We'll just call it state. We're also going to add a text. It's going to be the message in the box. Just call it message. And if you hold down B and click, you get a branch. And we're going to get our message border from the side here. You can grab it from the variables, do get, drag off, and we're going to set visibility. The way it shows it. And then we want to grab our message text, hit get, and then we can drag off of here, say set text. If I can type. I have a swollen finger. I got stung by a yellow jacket. Okay. Pop that in there. And then on false, we'll just set it back to hidden. Okay, simple. Okay. And now we need to go to the controller, the tutorial controller. And actually in the interface, if you double click that, it takes you to the interface function. I need an input of type text, and we'll just call it name, the interactable name. Compile and save. There, okay, see it shows up there. And this is going to come from, let's go back to the player character. It's going to come from the player character, but right click here, do get controller. And then from here, we could do the show. And then for the name here, this is where we can do the get interactable name. And since they're the same type, blah, pop right there. Okay, cool. And with that, we're really close to getting this to display. Let's go to the controller. Let's see, okay, we want the name to come across as a message. So let's go to this client and add a text. Let's call it the message that's coming through. Now here over on the client, we can call our UI event. Just pull out the reference here, we get the reference. And what was it? Interactable message. All right, there's that one. Pop that over there. Oh yeah, we need a state, a boolean, but you could just drag it in here. Does that work here? Okay, it doesn't work. Oh yeah, we need to make it in here. File, save. Just like that. Okay, and that comes from, and that goes, okay, we need to go to the character. And now we set that to true. And we copy and paste it. Needs a target. That's the controller. Okay, this is me from the future cutting into the video because when I originally made it and I made this node, I forgot to check there, uncheck state. Now, it still works, but I meant to uncheck this, and I don't know why it still works, but just keep that in mind. Okay, back to the video. And if you're doing a multiplayer game, you actually need to set this overlapped variable to replicated. That's just a minor detail. I think that's everything we need. Because the player overlaps. Sets it to true. We send the name. Pop the message up. Okay, so this should work. Let's see. Go over here. And it works. Okay. So there's a lot more steps than I remember getting to this point. So I'm going to break this up into 2 more videos. So the next one, we will press the interact button and our combo lock widget will show up, I promise. And then and then it'll like open a door or something. I forgot how much setup it took to, but at least we have it the right way. And if you want to add more interactable objects, use similar logic, now you have the tools. All right, see you in the next part.